I chose a scripture for today because it's Palm Sunday, and I wanted to remember the activity of the parade and how everyone hailed Jesus as King. Now we move later to that week. And according to Luke 23, verse 3, Jesus is in the court and he's asked a question. And here it is. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answered and said, "You have said so." Now, I think the vast majority of you have tried to cash a check somewhere. People don't know you. And then they very politely say to you, "I'm sorry, we don't accept checks." Has that happened to you? That's happened to me a time or two. Well, this was greatly reduced by the use of credit cards and debit cards. And I happen to have mine here. With no question at all, this little piece of plastic has become a credential. And that's what we're talking about today. The scripture spoke about how Jesus was treated to a parade, and the people proclaimed, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." Yes, they said he was a king. So let's think about this for a few minutes. What kind of credentials did Jesus have, and did he need to even carry to prove that he was a king? Did he have a crown on his head? No. Would that have made him a king? Was he carrying a scepter? No. And did he have a long purple robe on? No, he didn't. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, he had no credentials but himself. Yet, he was welcomed as a king. So, what is there about Jesus that allows us to accept him as a king? What are his credentials? He didn't have a driver's license. He didn't have a debit or credit card. He didn't have a state ID card. Nothing that would prove who he was. His credentials, you see, were seen in his demeanor before his enemies. Someone else in his position there in the courts, they could have lied their way out of it. Or perhaps they would have tried to bargain with Pilate. Jesus did neither of these two things. He showed that he was the real king. So there's 4 points that I kind of want to use to characterize Jesus today as a king. The first one is that this is a king who commands respect. As Jesus stood before his accusers, he appeared as one who commanded respect. When Pilate asked Jesus, "Don't you hear what they're saying about you?" Jesus gave no answer. Scripture says that Pilate was wondering greatly about that answer. Jesus knew what was coming. He walked the walk and he became obedient. He became so obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. In Mark Twain's book, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, there was an incident that took place in a classroom, and it was in which Tom and then character Betty Hatcher were both in the schoolroom under the stern leadership of Mr. Dobbins. Well, while the teacher was out of the room, Becky accidentally tore a page out of his favorite book. And when Mr. Dobbins discovered the damaged book, he was furious. He soon went around the room asking each student, "Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it?" Well, pretty soon it was going to be Becky's time, And Tom Sawyer stood up, knowing that Becky would buckle under pressure, and shouted, "I done it." The teacher turned angrily towards Tom, gave him a whooping, and made him stay after school for 2 hours. Now, Becky, who waited for Tom after school, was filled with gratitude and said, "Tom, how could you be so noble? You didn't have to do it, but you did." Jesus showed nobility. Therefore, he deserves respect.